All right, guys. I haven't been streaming this weekend, partly because I was very busy. Also, um, not always the best of composure. You know, the coughing would probably it's probably even worse than usual. So I'm going to try to do my best here. So yeah, my Cowboys got just blown out today, flattened by the Colts, and so I'm going to try to shift topic for myself and talk a little about Hasan Minhaj's show, Patriot Act. Now, I did my own review of one of his episodes. I believe it was in November, early November. And I had to say, some of the show was funny. Some of the show was very, just kind of fell flat for me. Now we're looking at this is from Slate, and there's also this is Patriot Act on Rotten Tomatoes. They have a 100% fresh rating, mostly because of the reviewers. So these are the reviewers that are basically looking at the show for NPR, Slate, Haaretz, I guess the Capital Times of Madison. You have Vox. I'm sure they had a controversial take on it. Uproxx, The Ringer, and Salon. So I would say that the pattern that's established here shows that he can't fail, essentially, because those are all publications that are all of the same ideological slant, and that is one of the reasons that comedy and entertainment is at a problematic juncture at this point. Okay, I wouldn't say it's the only reason. I wouldn't say that it. In fact, I'm going to try to make the point that it's not even the worst reason that it is, but it is a huge factor because it shows that the show has very limited appeal. I think Hasan Minhaj might, in his mind, think that he's reaching new audiences, but if you look out at the landscape, it's demonstrable that it isn't. Okay, and here it goes. Hasan Minhaj's Patriot Act is a Last Week Tonight clone with a critical difference. Remember that. They say, this is from In-Crew Kong from Slate, who actually, I think you can see her photo here. Yeah, you see her. And she says, John Oliver's Last Week Tonight is so reliably outstanding and valuable that its greatest flaw has often been that it only airs once every 7 days. A copycat was inevitable, and it's finally here, hosted by another Daily Show alum, Patriot Act with Hasan Minhaj. The half-hour magazine-style comedy series, which airs on Netflix, finds Minhaj going deep on a topical issue for about 20 minutes at a time. But Patriot Act diverts from its predecessor in one unmistakable way. It lets Minhaj be Minhaj, i.e. an Indian-American comic whose belief and reference points are often influenced by his cultural background and experiences as a brown man in America. Also amply demonstrated in the viral Queer Eye crossover that so delighted my colleague Ayman Ismail. So notice the writing style here. She lavishes praise on a competing show. I say competing not because John Oliver is necessarily directly competing with Hasan Minhaj. I'm sure people can like both shows, and you don't necessarily have to support one or the other. But the fact is, if you really look at what's going on with this paragraph, the opening paragraph, which is so far as I care, is probably the only one that matters at this point. She's basically writing the article itself to a very limited audience. Okay, because she's basically paying homage to John Oliver, so you already have to be kind of at least a person who's a fan of his show to like this show. And then she goes and says, it lets Minhaj be Minhaj. And so what are you supposed to say? Last Week Tonight, that doesn't let John Oliver be John Oliver? What kind of ridiculous distinction is that? John Oliver has at least, I would say he does have creative direction in his he has creative direction on his show on Last Week Tonight. That's probably more from himself than his producers. They're not making John Oliver do his show like Jon Stewart used to do, or like Trevor Noah does. They let him be himself. I don't watch either show. I'm just saying that it's If you think that this is a distinction, then that's a very, very base distinction. Every person brings a different style to their delivery. And then she throws in this obscure reference. Reference points are often influenced by his cultural background and experience. As a brown man in America. Wow, very nice. So she lumps in Indian Americans. I just had a conversation with an Indian friend of mine, Arjun, and no, you can't claim that all experiences of Indian Americans are the same, let alone of all brown men. So this is really, it's an article that's already gotten off to a start where you have an ideological slant. You have the article is biased towards people who are already fans of a different show, so it's already limiting the audience. Do you see what I'm trying to say? I'm not trying to say that she's not giving her own take on it. I'm saying that her opinion of the show pretty much boxes her into a category where you would say, well, are you really speaking to the general public, or are you just speaking to a certain inside joke that you yourself have with part of the audience? Because it seems like that. There's a part of the audience that will accept the cues that In Kang is talking about, and then there's another part of the audience that has no clue what she's talking about, especially when she throws in this last sentence in parentheses, also amply demonstrating the viral Queer Eye crossover that so delighted my. So she talks about something that is probably very, very limited. Let's even see what it is. Like Queer Eye for a Straight Guy was that weird gay show that was that clip of Queer Eye's Tan France schooling Hasan Minhaj on clothes and brownness. So, this is like really, these are people who are basically writing entire articles based on little snippets that just resonate with themselves, which is fine if you have a massive group of people that are fans of this. But Queer Eye for a Straight Guy, which I thought was a retarded show back in the day, it was kind of like that's when I think I remember that South Park made a hilarious episode where they proved that they said that there was proof that those people who were on the show weren't really like gay guys. They were just a bunch of crab people. That was one of the funniest shows in the history of the show. That was one of the funniest episodes in the history of the show. So we're not even going to read the rest of this article because a lot of it is just her playing to all of the playing to all of the small niche segments of society. So that's really where you're going to see here. You have Salon saying Hasan Minhaj's revolution, Patriot Act breaks free from the Daily Show format and soars. So they're all trying to say that he is breaking with the rest of the shows. The Daily Show, Last Week Tonight, Full Frontal with Samantha Bee. There's another show that's up there. There was the Nightly Show. I remember there's Weekend Update on SNL. No, it does not, because in fact, I saw the show. The format that he presents it in is sort of similar to the way that Samantha Bee show is. It's almost. I wouldn't say it's the same as Michelle Wolf's former show, The Break, which I think was the worst of all of them, and it was a titanic atrocity of failure. I wouldn't say it was that bad, but the fact is that these people, yes, do they have larger audiences than me? Do they have larger audiences than the average YouTube channel? Possibly, but the cost of producing them is just so high that at a certain point, what does it matter? They're producing the same show, and then they have to get the set, and they have to get all the production, and it's a major investor of resources for Netflix. It says in 3 short episodes of his Netflix show Patriot Act, Hasan Minhaj has achieved something few, if any, many have expected. I don't even know that sentence makes any sense. The Daily Show alumnus has evolved the current events talk variety format beyond the structure set in place by The Daily Show as it was realized by Jon Stewart. So again, they're analogizing him to a previous person And then look down here. It says on Full Frontal with Samantha Bee, the host presents her segments front and center, assisted by a team of correspondents who deliver field pieces. There's no sense in messing with structure that works, especially when the hosts of these shows built their reputation as daily show correspondents. So these people are all focusing on the format, but they are not focusing on the down here. She says that Minhaj is using like the TED Talk format, but you know, TED Talks have not, you know, they've come and gone. It's not as if TED Talks are this massive sensation anymore. A lot of people don't, you know, if you see somebody giving a TED Talk, it's like almost cliched now. You just see them on a stage and people are like, well, I guess, you know, there's another smart ass that everybody should pay attention to. It doesn't even matter if their content is important or not, because people now assume that it's just more of this, more of these people who get 30 or 40 minutes to basically talk about why you should change the world the way that they think you should. And that's why I think his show is not significantly different from John Oliver's. It's just they wrap it in a different packaging. And I'm not talking about the fact that he's different of a different race. They do the show in a different format. The race thing is kind of a small modification, just like all of them are. It's like there's you know, when Samantha Bee got her show, it was you know, they were saying, well, this is the female version of this. When Trevor Noah took over the Daily Show, you know, this was the immigrant from overseas. That was the person who was taking it over. But it's the same show, and the format is kind of played. So this person says Hasan Minhaj breaks through drunk fatigue with Patriot Act. This is from NPR. I never really thought about dunk fatigue. Oh, okay. It's not drunk fatigue. It's dunk fatigue. Until I saw Hasan Minhaj on his new Netflix show Patriot Act, masterfully working through it. What is dunk fatigue? Well, let us take as a baseline the public life currently is full of people who are pretty easy to dunk on. And let us define dunk as a satisfying joke or barrage of jokes mixed with truths, cathartic and merciless, ostentatious, and totally sincere, done in front of an audience eager to cheer. Anytime you see a headline that says so-and-so destroyed such and such over a topic where said destruction takes place in a video you can watch that's just someone talking, that's probably a good old dunk. One of the challenges of a show that involves a lot of dunks, like Last Week Tonight or Full Frontal with Samantha Bee, is that after a while it can find itself dunking on the same people over the same things. Well, that's exactly so basically she says that it gets over that. It doesn't. It's the same it's the same damn thing. Hasan Minhaj has pretty much the same show as the other ones with slight differences. So I happened to find, we're not going to read all of these, but here you see Common Sense Media had, I don't even think that this is a real review, by the way. So this is just kind of an advisory over whether your kid should be able to watch it. This is from Common Sense Media. And they have 4 stars out of 5. And then you have Haaretz. They say Netflix Patriot Act with Hasan Minhaj is way funnier and fresher than Last Week Tonight. Then why do you keep having to mention Last Week Tonight? Finally, I found you know, this is the real question. Is anybody really willing to tell their full opinion, at least, you know, even using the context of the other shows about Last Week Tonight, about Patriot Act, without trying to, you know, pull their punches? And I think this one got the best. This one is the best one. Okay, Hasan Minhaj and his new Netflix show, The Patriot Act, brings a new voice to the landscape of political satire, which is fast-paced, intelligent, and charming, yet can leave the viewer puzzled and unfulfilled. The show is built around Minhaj's unique delivery and perspective, which, while entertaining and provocative, can at times be so niche. This is why I liked it, and obscure, that many of the jokes fly by without much audience laughter and can leave the viewer scratching their head. The show breaks from the typical Daily Show and Last Week Tonight convention of a man in a suit behind a desk. Instead, the former Daily Show correspondent stands wearing his own casual, stylish attire. Minhaj delivers his 20-plus minute monologue on a stage that doubles as a screen and is surrounded by screens reminiscent of a modern-day rock concert. Minhaj even jokes in his first episode that he is doing his show from inside an Apple Watch. Episodes are released on Netflix every Sunday, and they typically feature Minhaj focusing on a single topic for the entire 20 to 25-minute show. The first 5 episodes have covered issues ranging from talked about the evils of Amazon, the hype around the brand Supreme. I don't know what the hell he said there. So yeah, this isn't a perfect article, by the way, but I think in terms of the message, it kind of, it's only one that I sort of saw really a truthful approach. Minhaj dives into each topic, delivering detailed research information and layering with satire, jokes, and pop culture references. One of the exciting things about the show is it gives a platform to an Indian American who is Muslim and came of age during and after 9/11. It is a voice mainstream America doesn't get to hear from often. I would disagree. There's plenty of people like that. And I mean, proportionally, there's plenty of people out there who get to talk about that. It's not something that's exactly rare in modern America that you hear people that you would hear people talking about that. In fact, you hear about it very, very often. So I would disagree with that. In any case, Minhaj is also really charming and likable, whether or not you understand his random and slightly manic pop culture, NBA, and Air Jordan sneaker-related references. He is naturally entertaining. Where the show falls short is in 2 places. First, his references are so closely tied to his point of view and life experience that he doesn't allow much room for those who don't relate to his generation or experience much room to laugh and learn. That I see is correct. If you watch his show, and I did watch 2 episodes, he just seems very... he seems like his show would it's even less appealing than John Oliver's. I think John Oliver is able to sometimes break out of his comfort zone. And with Hasan Minhaj, it seems like he's really just aiming towards millennials and especially minority millennials or hyper-liberal millennials. So it's just a fact. If you watch the show, you'll see what I'm talking about. I don't think he's trying to get into other sectors of the audience that would normally not watch a show like that. He's not breaking any new ground that any of those other shows like The Daily Show haven't broken already in terms of content. More than that, the show falls short on the amount of comedy he adds to his topics. Most political satire shows bring close to a 50-50 split of news and information and comedy. At times, Patriot Act seems to be 80% news and information and 20% comedy. If you watch his show, the one on, not on affirmative action, there were 2 episodes I saw. So there was one on affirmative action and there was one on Amazon. The Amazon show, he spits out a lot of information on the company. But in reality, some of the jokes, it looked like it took three minutes between each one. So at times it felt like you were listening to kind of a board meeting or something. It just, I mean, if you watch a show, it's very obvious that he does do research. But there's a difference between doing research and taking something that's supposed to be a performance art and making it information art, which I think is he doesn't really grab an audience that way. Minhaj delves almost too deeply into the information, hoping to blow your mind and then attempting to make you laugh. His show may be more effective if he simply cleared the bar of informing the viewer and then striving to make them laugh more often. See, frequently strong jokes barely land with his live audience because they often follow a long thread of information that the audience is still likely to trying to process while he is delivering a punchline. The show certainly lives in the right venue of Netflix, where ratings and broad appeal are not nearly as important as adding content and seeing what creates its own buzz. So here I disagree. So yes, is it important to have ratings on Netflix? Of course not, because it's not live. You're not seeing scheduled programming. People can just tune in whenever they want. On the other hand, if you're not getting people to click and view the content at all, then in a sense you're actually failing in ratings, but in a very different way. Okay, people are not going to tune in to watch the show. Okay, so then therefore, how would you know if it's creating any buzz? It works differently than regular TV, but at the end of the day, they both have some sort of metric that they have to aim toward. This may allow Minhaj time to gain more of an audience and for his unique voice to find a way to inform and delight all types of people, whether they understand all of what he is viewing or not. but what are you saying or not? No, I don't think that that's really going to happen. And the fact is that, I don't really like Hasan Minhaj, but it doesn't even matter that way. It's very difficult to succeed as a talk show on demand. I think David Letterman, I'm not sure if his show got renewed, but I heard that his new Netflix show is not really doing as well as they'd hoped. He wanted to make it a little more freeform, and people just don't seem to show up to watch it as much as before. I could be wrong. I mean, I haven't really delved into that show because I was never a fan of Letterman when he was on TV. So he closes this by saying, viewers may not laugh out loud and they may often be confused, yet one can bet they will still be waiting. They will be waiting excitedly for the next episode to drop. So even this review, which is the most honest review of the ones that I saw, is not being fair and cutting enough to say that, look, this guy has a very, he has his talents. I think he, if you watch the show, he is able to, I think you can tell that he has good comedy writing skills. You can tell that he's able to construct a nice story out of things. Now, there are some very clumsy transitions, I would say, but the problem is more and more fundamental than just his content and his delivery. You see, if you look at every form of every genre of art or even genre of entertainment, news, everything, you see that there at a certain point a movement begins to fall apart because people have become saturated with it and they want something new. Remember in the 70s there was progressive rock, which was very artful and sophisticated, and there were long tracks of 11 minutes or 14 minutes or whatever, and these concept albums, and they were amazing. And what happened? Punk rock swept in, and suddenly progressive rock just went through a very rough period, and many of those bands, they went from having those concept albums to having very stripped down and commercialized albums. Remember Genesis with Peter Gabriel was much different with Phil Collins because they had to depart from, eventually the evolution had to happen. You guys might not like it, but the fact is that at a certain point, these progressive rock bands had conquered all the worlds that they had to conquer. Pink Floyd split up in the early 80s, I believe. It was in 1983, mostly because their vision became so different between each member that they had to split up. But part of that was because of the rise of punk rock, the rise of course, even without the rock genre, disco was hitting it big. So, in music, you especially see suddenly a dominant genre begins to fall apart almost overnight. That's what happened with hair metal. Hair metal overnight, people remember that within a few days, people started to wear baggy jeans and flannel shirts because Smells Like Teen Spirit came out. Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Chris Cornell, and Soundgarden. Those bands started to come out. So a paradigm shift can take place very fast in music. It's not quite as fast with TV, but you can see, are there as many reality shows out there today as there were before? Of course not. Are there as many late night sitcoms as there used to be? Not quite. I mean, it hasn't died entirely, but it's simply, people end up going for a different type of art. So in this case, these are people, they all come from the same family of comedians or guild, I would say. The comedy, I think, is a little bit of like a world of guilds. For example, there was the Groundlings troupe. There was the Second City troupe back in the day, in the 80s, before my time even. A lot of those people ended up collaborating, making some pretty good movies. You might remember the movies Strange Brew, or some of the other SCTV comedies that came out in the 80s. You might remember especially the Stripes movie with Bill Murray and Rick Moranis, not Rick Moranis, the other guy, Harold Ramis. So Harold Ramis was in a couple movies with Bill Murray, and then eventually those movies were great and they had a lot of success. And then eventually some of those creators, some of those producers and directors and the writers, they finally put together a movie that kind of bombed and the whole enterprise fell apart. Okay, remember, I hope you guys do remember, Mike Myers, for many years, he was making hit after hit after hit with Austin Powers. Finally, he makes a movie called The Love Guru, which was a complete and utter disaster that nobody wanted to watch again. And his career was over. You haven't seen him again. So I think that, I don't know when that's going to happen with this genre, but you do see just these series, they just seem to flop. So you could be seeing their Love Guru moment. So thank you for watching, those of you that have. And please like this video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to my other channels on, what's up, Pinochet? A. Hoser, exactly. He knows Rick Moranis. That was a good movie. I mean, I'm not trying to insult anybody that I'm talking about. Even I don't like Hasan Minhaj, but I think he made a pretty good show. So anyway, yeah, please like the video, subscribe to my channels on Cocoscope and on, what's that other channel, that other site, BitChute. You have Gab. I just started joining Gab groups now, so I didn't know that there was any. Minds.com. Also, well, fuck Facebook. So you can see all the information below, and I'll talk to you guys later. See you soon.